All right, guys, happy Monday, and I'm sorry, but it is here. It is the season finale of the Kamala Chronicles. You're probably so worried about that because usually season finales are really bad, but it's okay because season 2, if I'm being honest, probably starts on Thursday. Tomorrow is the election, so we really had to put everything we had into researching Kamala over the weekend. And I'm telling you, this woman is a dyed-in-the-wool commie. There's no question about that. The amount of things that we are uncovering about her family members. I can't wait later this week or next week to tell you about this doctor in her family that went to Howard that she kind of never mentions and pretends that she was drawn toward Howard University because of a friend of her mother. This woman lies patently. Look, this series has really been a true American horror story. And to be honest, I don't even know if the horror story is, in fact, American. It might be a Canadian horror story, a British horror story, or a Singaporean horror story, which means that it's probably a CIA horror story. So guys, let's get right into it. Welcome back to Candace. Kamala's family story makes no sense. I mean, that really is our thesis here, our understanding here. It has been plaguing my mind. Her father makes no sense. He is so secretive. They have entirely no relationship. Donald Harris seems to have fallen off the face of the planet. Not something a dad usually does when their daughter is about to become the president of the United States. Those are your thoughts, at least if you're a Democrat. You're going, oh my gosh, she's going to be the first female African-American president of the United States. You would expect that he would be so proud and out in the open. But as I said, he remains secretive. And as I'm looking through everything, trying to comprehend why we cannot locate a birth certificate for this man, Donald Harris, we should be able to easily locate a birth certificate. I'm starting to go through all the things that don't add up with him. For example, we know for a fact that he attended underground Marxist meetings in his youth in Jamaica. Apparently, as I've learned from the family member, the Harris family member that has been open with me, he basically says, look, there were these nighttime meetings that took place in the basement at the University of West Indies, and Donald would frequently attend them with other Harris family members. We similarly cannot find a birth certificate, as I said, for his only full sibling. So Donald Harris only has one full sibling. That individual's name is Kenneth Harris, and we can't find a birth certificate for Kenneth either. In Jamaica, this is where we have been looking for a birth certificate. We've been out to the office. Like, you should be able to just file and say we want a birth certificate. We've now filed and paid to receive it twice with the registrar's office. One was due today. We have not received it. We filed for one weeks ago and never received it. It's just all very shady. Of course, we noted that Donald goes through great pains not to mention much about his mother, Beryl, in the piece that he wrote for the Jamaican Times, the Jamaican Global Online. And it's very interesting because it almost appears like she's an afterthought. He just writes one sentence about her as if he didn't know her. We also know Kamala, of course, outright lied about who Beryl was. She presented a picture. It was not Beryl. Interestingly, when she presents that picture of Grandma Beryl in her book, allegedly Donald's mom, there's nothing in the book about Beryl. It was just a photo put of Beryl in the pictorial section of the book. And then she sort of mysteriously drops Beryl in a later publication a couple of months later, which is supposed to be for youth readers. But youth readers like photos. So why would you present less photos and drop your grandmother, who you don't even mention in the book at all? Then, of course, to jog your memory, there was Dorothy, the woman who came forward and sat down with Lady C. And she said that she remembered Kenneth. He was a very good-looking guy. He had a motorcycle. We know that they had money. And she was so sweet. But one of the things that we didn't speak about enough is the fact that Dorothy says that she didn't know Donald at all. She never knew Donald. Take a listen.
I don't know her other son, who is Kamala's father. I know of him, but I have never met him.
Like I said, very interesting. We also know and have gathered that Donald traveled extensively in his youth, and that may be the reason why she didn't know him. Maybe he simply was not around in Jamaica in his youth. We've learned from a family member that he traveled a lot, but also Donald himself admits that he traveled a lot, extensively through South America, in Asia. He's been all around the world. For what reason? Apparently just for education. That was the impression that his family family was left with of why Donald would be gone for long periods of time. And then when he returns, he's suddenly in these underground Marxist meetings. Very interesting. Now I want to remind you about another person in politics who we have mentioned throughout this series who had a similarly shady background, because some of you guys were absolutely shocked to learn the truth about Barry Soetoro, known to some people as Barack Obama, known to me and his close friends and his relatives as Barry Soetoro, a man who grew up in Indonesia, lived as Barry until he graduated college, was raised by his grandparents. I hate to be redundant here, but I do want to jog your memory with this clip of the news station, which uncovered really what was the only remaining relic of Barry Soetoro in Indonesia, which would indicate to us, yeah, they tried to completely delete this. They tried to disappear his record in Indonesia. Take a listen.
As Senator Barack Obama has made his run for president, some have questioned his background, particularly the 4 years he spent as a child in Indonesia. He was educated in 2 schools, first a Catholic school and then later a public school. Matt Mahar traveled to Indonesia to take you to both of the schools the candidate attended.
This is the Assisi Catholic Grammar School in Jakarta, Indonesia. And Barack Obama is on his way to becoming its most famous former student.
Barack Obama.
The only record of Obama having attended the school is this old register. And look, it lists his name as Barry Soetoro. That's the name Obama took from his Indonesian stepfather, Lolo Soetoro.
Yeah, typically when you have to register in school, you have to show documents of what your name is. So he legally changed his name to Barry Soetoro, enrolled in the school. And then, like I said, they tried to delete every record of this. But fortunately, Inside Edition was able to locate just one. Of course, then we had on Judge Joe Brown, who informed us that Barry's stepfather, who is also difficult to locate if you're looking for records of him, if you just do a basic Google search, there's not much said about him. Well, apparently Lolo was intimately involved with the CIA. Again, that is per Judge Joe Brown. Take a listen to what he said to us.
You get Lolo Soetoro running the death squads for the Indonesian government, so that meant you had money. Indonesia might have had access to the world's largest oil reserves as they were perceived at the time. So Standard Oil used his muscle and his position to take over the oil industry in Indonesia, which they couldn't do under American law. So George Herbert Walker Bush, under the auspices of Uncle Herbie, George Herbert Walker, sets up Zapata Oil. They have a family holding company, Zapata Offshore Oil, which was chartered in Kuwait, by the way. Keep that in mind. And what winds up happening is George Herbert Walker, dealt with Lolo Soetoro quite frequently on oil deals. And remember, George Herbert Walker becomes chief of the CIA under the Ford administration, and he deals with their number one contract guy over in Asia, which when the NAM was going on, Lolo ran intelligence for the CIA under contract in China, North Korea, North Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Indonesia.
Then we learned that Barry goes to Hawaii, which we know was a military outfit. Some of you guys were very shocked to learn that the birther crisis, where was he born, was not a figment of racist imaginations, but rather the result of Barack Obama's first book, which was being promoted by his publisher with a bio that clearly stated that he was born in Kenya. By the way, did you guys know how that predicament ended? Well, after years of speculation from the time that he hit the scene of people saying, you are born in Kenya, we found this we know you're born in Kenya, Obama then rather gloriously requested a copy of his birth certificate from Hawaii in 2011. And here is the letter that he sent over to the director of health. It says, Dear Ms. Fuddy, I'm writing to request 2 certified copies of my original certificate of live birth. With this letter, I hereby authorize my personal counsel, Ms. Judith Corley of Perkins Coy in Washington, D.C., to act on my behalf in providing any additional information or paying any fees required by the Department of Health to fulfill my request. Ms. Corley is authorized to make any necessary arrangements for delivery of the certified copies from your office. Thank you for your assistance. Sincerely, signed Barack Obama. And now, of course, that is of interest because the public should have been able to get his birth certificate. Over all these years, you can just request a birth certificate and you should be able to receive a copy. And yet, for whatever reason, the Hawaiian Department of Health was not providing one for years. Well, he got a response. He received this response very quickly, by the way. I don't know the government to move this quick, but I guess when you're dealing with the President of the United States, you move very quickly. He received this response 3 days later from a woman named Loretta Fuddy, who was the director of the Hawaiian State Health Department. She wrote to him, "I've reviewed your request for 2 certified copies of your original certificate of live birth. As the director of health for the state of Hawaii, I have the legal authority to approve the process by which copies of such records are made. Through that authority and recognition of your status as President of the United States, I'm making an exception to current departmental policy, which is to issue a computer-generated certified copy. We hope that issuing these copies of your original certificate of live birth will end the numerous inquiries received by the Hawaii State Department of Health to produce this document. Such inquiries have been disruptive to staff operations and have strained state resources." Now, obviously, this is being written for the public. If I write a letter to the health department, I'm like, "Can I have my birth certificate?" It'd be like yes or no. They're not going to be like, "Oh, I hope that this clears up the public matter." Like, this is written like a PR statement. And indeed it was, because this ended up being released to the public, basically saying, we don't want to hear any more noise about Barack Obama and where he was born. And so they issued one. But it wasn't exactly case closed. The Maricopa Sheriff's Office, yes, in Arizona, opened a case looking into the copy that Ms. Loretta provided because they suspected that they were looking at a direct forgery of a birth certificate. There was a birth certificate that belonged to someone in Hawaii named Johanna Ani, and they felt certain that Barry's birth certificate was copy and pasted. So they sent the 2 certificates out to 2 different digital document experts that were completely unknown to each other upon different continents. So you got 2 experts on different continents taking a look into this document, and they looked into this for years. And they both of these experts came back with the same conclusion. Obama's birth certificate was a forgery. So the Maricopa Sheriff's Office hosted a press conference to reveal these findings, and this is the video that they revealed to the public in that press conference. Take a listen.
You are looking at 2 long-form birth certificates from the state of Hawaii. According to the dates on the certificates, these births took place in Honolulu during the month of August in 1961, just 16 days apart. The birth certificate on the left belongs to Barack Obama. The birth certificate on the right belongs to Johanna Ani. After 5 years of intense investigation, which included consultation with one of America's most respected forensic document examiners and a team of European media forensic experts, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office has reached a conclusion utilizing forensic techniques both old and new. It is the opinion of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office that the birth certificate on your right belonging to Johanna Ani was in fact used as a source document in the digital creation of Barack Obama's long-form birth certificate. 9 points of forgery in which words, letters, and hand-placed date stamps have been digitally copied from the Ani long-form birth certificate and pasted onto Obama's long-form birth certificate. We'll look at the first 5 points of forgery together, since they were brought over from the Ani document in one group. Ask yourself, what are the odds that 2 stamps in 2 separate boxes, stamped by hand 16 days apart, would have the exact same angle in box 20 and the exact same angle in box 22? First, we'll look at the left stamp. Now the right stamp. It should be pointed out that these stamps were looked at by two separate document examiners who specialize in two separate forensic disciplines and who reside on two different continents. Both agreed that these angles are identical on both the Obama document and the Ani document. Now we are going to focus on boxes 6D and 6E within the Obama PDF. It would seem that both X's were taken directly from box 6D in the Ani long-form birth certificate. In fact, not only was the X pulled over, but the box itself was pulled over, and various parts of the line on top of the X were also pulled over, according to forensic document experts.
Well, you can imagine that that's a bit scandalous, and it's interesting the mainstream media did not want to cover that. Again, this was coming from the sheriff's office, and they had sent this out to experts to take a look at this. And I also want to remind you that at this time, people were using typewriters. So it's not like when you're just typing the way that we do on a computer. These are typewriters. So for things to line up in that way, yeah, it's a bit suspicious. And you can only imagine that the one person who would be able to come out and respond to this properly to say, hey, no, this was not something that was done or recreated or something that was copy and pasted, would be Loretta. She's the one that certified it. Loretta from the Hawaiian Health Department. But unfortunately, Loretta died. She wasn't able to do that because she died in a rather mysterious plane crash in December of 2013, just pretty much a year and a half after she had issued that birth certificate. She was on a plane in Hawaii with 8 passengers, but all the other passengers miraculously survived the crash. After an investigation, it was determined that her seat had accidentally been given an infant life vest. And on that plane, those 8 seats, only 2 of the passengers had been accidentally given an infant life vest. And of the 2 passengers, her luck was even worse than that, because it turns out that hers was the only vest that had a malfunctioning inflation. So those CO2 inflation canisters that are inside, hers had one that was punctured and it was empty. So it was just bad luck, bad luck. The good thing, though, is that she didn't drown. Apparently, this was a plane crash that I guess you could say was relatively minor. There was no explosion. She was just floating in the ocean as everyone else was, waiting to be rescued. But then she died of an irregular heartbeat, which was triggered by the excitement of the event. Officially, her death was attributed to an irregular heartbeat as she was waiting to be rescued. And her family members spoke out and said she never had she had anxiety issues, never. She was always very calm. So this seemed unusual to them. These things happen. These things do happen. Anyways, I'm therefore always a bit apprehensive when I can't locate somebody's birth certificate, a politician, and when weird accidents surround it, and family members are also seem to be strange and involved with the CIA, or we can't find their birth certificates. And I'm reminding myself of Barry's extraordinary ascension to the White House. In reminding myself of that, I was brought back to Donald and Kamala Harris and how Judge Joe Brown told us that she did nothing and was just kind of allowed to become a district attorney. I had people helping her out the entire time, that she was really serving George Soros. I'm reminded of Yoichi Shimatsu telling us that she was working on behalf of the cartels, that she is somehow involved in the upper echelons of the government. And I suddenly went to myself, maybe I'm just limiting my scope here when I'm looking at Donald Harris. Why am I only looking within Jamaica? Why don't we try to broaden our search to see if we can locate this guy elsewhere, since we know that he traveled so much? And we have come across some documents. I think that there is some evidence that it could be our Donald. Of course, we don't know for sure, but because Dorothy and the Harris family have communicated and confirmed that he traveled extensively in his youth, it's worth looking at these documents. So we were able to locate a Donald Harris on a manifest, a ship manifest in 1949, traveling from Singapore to the UK. It lists him as a British citizen, and which would be, by the way, accurate. You have to remind yourself that at this time, Jamaica, it was the British West Indies. So if you were Jamaican, you would have been, in fact, a British citizen. We have seen this on other Donald Harris documents. And you see he's 11 years old at this time. If this is our Donald Harris, again, we don't have a confirmation. But again, we do have this 11-year-old traveling in first class all by himself, which is quite strange. There is not another Harris on this manifest, at least traveling in first class. There isn't one. And I just found this to be of interest. Like, he has listed that he traveled all throughout Asia publicly. He has owned that he's been in Japan, he's been all around the world, he's been to Singapore. So I just found this to be interesting. This Singapore manifest, again, in 1949, a Donald Harris listed traveling to what we know today as the UK. Then we found another Donald Harris on a manifest in Hawaii. Hawaii, of course, is interesting only because it became this military base and there was a lot of weird activity happening on that island. This is in 1954. Again, reminding you this could be another Donald Harris, but we flagged it because this Donald Harris is traveling with a Kenneth Harris. And so that, of course, is of interest to us because we know that his brother's name is Kenneth, and he seems to be seemingly as mysterious as his brother Donald. Could there be another Donald and a Kenneth Harris? Is maybe Antoinette Harris their mother? Are they traveling because maybe their father lives at the Air Force Base? Yeah, that is a possibility. Again, we are just trying to explore every angle here. And this is something that we came across that we thought was of interest. And then we find who we are certain is our Donald Harris. I know that he spent time in Puerto Rico. I know that he spent a lot of time in Brazil. We found our Donald Harris in Puerto Rico in 1959, just 5 years after that Hawaii manifest. And so this would be likely, this is his handwriting, because you have to fill out the things yourself, and then somebody grants you a stamp and he lists his birth date accurately. We have his birth date recorded as 8/23/1938. It says his birthplace is Kingston, Jamaica. That's the first time I've seen that. I was informed from his family member that he was actually born in St. Elizabeth Parish. And I don't believe that is in Kingston. So that is of interest there. You can see, again, listing the nationality as British. That is accurate. So that's not something some people are like, oh, why did you say that he's British? Because if you were born in Jamaica, you were indeed British at the time that he would have been born in 1938. But this is definitively our Donald Harris. So we are beginning to just broaden our search into him. Anyways, I wanted to present that to the public because we have been getting so much feedback from you guys, and it has been very helpful. It has been helping us to dilute what is and is not this Harris family. But when we start to hear these words, when we start to hear, Standard Oil, as Judge Joe Brown brought up, and as we in our research determined that she had cousins that were working for Standard Oil in a big capacity that were involved in Cuba. We've also come across, as I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, some more documents pertaining to somebody who was a cousin to this family and was involved in Montreal, went to Howard University. We'll speak about that later this week. Everything could be a clue or could not be a clue, but what I can tell you is that everything about her life makes no sense. I very much believe, after learning that her mother was involved in the MK Ultra program, that she would have been a recipient of the MK Ultra programming. We know that her mother was strict. We also have learned that her mother worked in that hospital in Montreal that had patients who were being MK Ultra that ranged from children to women. I don't see how an adult goes to work and is playing psychological games with children and women all day and then comes home and is able to just compartmentalize that and not do it to their own children. This is very scary stuff that we're talking about. We should take this very seriously. And like I said, it is leading me to believe that, of course, it's possible that leaders are being selected when we routinely see this pattern, from Emmanuel Macron to Barack Obama to Kamala Harris to Joe Biden. We have to start asking meaningful questions. And of course, I'm never afraid to be the first one to do it. All All right, guys, I want to take a brief second to remind you about Hallow and their prayer challenge for this election. Hallow is the #1 Christian prayer and meditation app in the world, offering thousands of guided prayers to help you get closer to God. Now they have a new prayer series called One Nation Under God. Every day you'll reflect on what it means to be a Christian and a citizen of the United States. Then you'll be guided in praying for peace, our country, our leaders, and our neighbors. Actor Neil McDonough will be your main guide throughout the week. He'll be joined by different guests, including Monse, Alvarado, and Katie McGrady, who both work at the intersection of news and faith. It is so important to remember that we are all God's children during this time, and that's what Hallow wants to help us do with this challenge. Whatever happens in this election, however crazy things get, we can all keep our peace and grow closer to God with the help of Hallow. So download Hallow for free for 3 months at hallow.com/Candace. The great part about that 3-month free trial is it will include Hallow's upcoming Advent prayer challenge, which will make the lead up to Christmas absolutely incredible. That's hallow.com/Candace for 3 months free. All right, guys, now let's get into some stories. By the way, I do want to update because we were looking into the Oscar Harris in Canada, and it turns out that that is not our Oscar Harris. We had somebody email us who was able to locate the obituary in Canada. So we were looking at that family. They could be related to our family, but it certainly is not our Oscar Harris without question. Also, somebody had some great eyes, and they caught this mistake that I made last week. When we had showed that Canadian manifest, the census rather, we were saying that this was the daughter and the son and they got married. Well, actually, let's take a look at that manifest again. Somebody made me realize that this is actually just poor handwriting. If you look where Dorothy is, we thought that Dorothy and Abraham got married. Well, they did get married and were buried together, but this was not an incestuous relationship because you can see it says "daughter-in-law" next to Dorothy. It's just really bad handwriting. So if you look at it quickly, it looks like daughter. But if you look at it closely, it actually says "daughter-in-law." So unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, this was a dead end. And that's not a problem. I mean, obviously the mom and the dad here are incestuous. They're first cousins, but not hyper unusual at that time. But they, at least, were not brother and sister, which would have been hyper unusual. I wanted to correct that because we're in the business of wanting to get to truths, but sometimes we make mistakes, and this was a mistake that we made. Speaking of mistakes made, Cardi B. She's our lead story today because she is the gift that keeps on giving. So obviously we know that they are very concerned about the black vote. It seems like in the last week, every black person has gotten the call that they have to make a statement about how people should be voting. And they always roll out Cardi B. Remember, rather notoriously, Joe Biden, when he was running, he was using COVID as an excuse to not give any interviews at all. Obviously, it was because he was in mental decline, even when he was running. But he did make time to sit down with Cardi B. And it was very embarrassing that he would do this. And I don't say that as an insult to Cardi B. I think her heart is in the right place, but her mind is just not always filled with the facts when she speaks. And so that he made time with her was just the ultimate pander. Well, now she's making time for Kamala, and she obviously had what she was supposed to say written for her. And it was put onto a teleprompter, and then that teleprompter malfunctioned, and she therefore malfunctioned. Take a listen.
What's up, Milwaukee? How you guys doing? I'm nervous. I'm excited. What's up, y'all?
Teleprompter.
1 second, guys. 1 second.
This is so embarrassing. They just hand her a phone.
Thank you.
So
right.
embarrassing.
Just like Kamala Harris, I too have been the underdog. I've been underestimated. My success belittled and discredited. Let me tell you something. Let me tell y'all something. Women have to work 10 times harder, perform 10 times better, and still people question us how we got to the top. They be like, how she got there? Hold on, let me warm up. Yeah. And I'm gonna be real with y'all. I wasn't gonna vote this year. I wasn't. But Kamala Harris joining the race, she changed my mind completely. I did not have faith on any candidates. until she joined the race and said the things that I wanted to hear, that I want to see next in this country. All right?
So a couple things I want to say there. It's very interesting that she says that Kamala represented this turning point because, as I just said, she was the one that stumped for Joe Biden. He went to her. They had that notorious interview. So what would have made her change her mind? Why wouldn't she vote for Joe Biden twice? He was the candidate. Makes entirely no sense unless she's just a person who is being told that she has to get out there and support Democrats. Like she doesn't actually have any thoughts of her own. And we can stop speculating about whether she has thoughts of her own because there's absolutely no reason that you would have this mass freak out if your teleprompter went off. You would just say, okay, I just got to like speak from the heart. Like maybe you wrote down some ideas to guide you along, but you wouldn't go, oh, and then wait for someone to hand you a phone. You would just be like, hey, guys, get out there, vote for Kamala Harris because of this, because of that. Here are my feelings about the economy. This is so embarrassing. And this is an indication, again, like I said, that none of these people are doing this because it's their own free will. And I truly believe that this is just something that they are all being told that they have to do by people that are managing them. And she is no different here. Honestly, next time, please just, wedding crashers, speak from the heart. Just speak from the heart, Cardi B. And that's all I'm going to say about the topic of her, because every time people get upset with me when I say, I respect that she hustled her way through life and made it to the top, but I don't respect the fact that she hasn't switched up. Like, she should be making an effort. If you are going to elect yourself a person that's going to get on stage and tell people how to vote, then you have to make some sort of an effort to properly educate yourself about the issues. Otherwise, what you are doing is just being a clown. You really are. You're just performing for people and expecting that because you have tons of followers and supporters are going to do exactly what you do, like a game of Simon Says, and not like our entire country is on the line and that we're fighting a dyed-in-the-wool communist, which Kamala is. I should add here also that J-Lo has come out in support of Kamala Harris, and she is crying for some reason. She was actually brought to tears. So let's just show you a clip of J-Lo crying. She just really needs Kamala to win because, women, here she is.
I promised myself I wouldn't get emotional. But you know what? We should be emotional. We should be upset. We should be scared and outraged. We should. Our pain matters. We matter. You matter. Your voice and your vote matters. And look, don't be afraid to make people around you uncomfortable. Invite people around you to be the change, to go out there and vote. Nobody likes having tough conversations or talking about politics, but trust me, I've been in some of these rooms. I see the way power works in this country. They love it when you do nothing, okay? A non-vote is an agreement. It just makes it easier for them to do whatever they want, whatever serves them. And this election is about your life. It's about you and me and my kids and your kids. Don't make it easy. Make them pay attention to you. That's your power. That's your power. Your vote is your power.
And this is interesting, of course, because J-Lo rather notoriously dated Diddy, and she just doesn't have that same energy. It's just amazing. LeBron didn't have the same energy for women. He had it for like Breonna Taylor, but didn't care about Cassie getting beat down by Diddy, and he's been mum on that. Same thing for J-Lo. She's not speaking out. That's because if you believe Kanye, and I do, it's because J-Lo allegedly was the person that was holding the gun for Diddy when he shot up in the club. Back when they were dating, there was this notorious shootout that happened in a club and led to their eventual breakup. And both of them were kept out of trouble. And Kanye says it's because they did a deal with the feds. And part of that deal was that Diddy had to control a lot of the rappers that were in the orbit. Okay, what was the deal for J-Lo? J-Lo got in trouble too that night. What was the deal for J-Lo? Was the deal that J-Lo too, when she gets the call, has to do these fake tears? Because if you're going to say that you care about women and do all of this, I'm just saying you have the opportunity to speak out on Diddy, who you attended a lot of parties with. You were his girlfriend. You were his, the candy on his arm. You loved this man. Everyone thought you were going to get married, and suddenly you're just completely mum. I cannot take these people seriously. It is tremendously hypocritical. Nothing about J-Lo's career has made any sense either. What was the deal? I'm not saying that she's not a good entertainer, but I am saying that she ain't the greatest singer, and she's got a lot of money. The hard work or deals with the feds like Ye said. I don't know. I'm just pointing to that. All right, guys, I want to remind you about Goldco because gold has been used as a store of value for thousands of years. It's known as a safe haven asset in times of uncertainty, and it has been breaking record after record this year. Many economists are predicting its price could skyrocket even higher. Right now, thousands of Americans are looking to precious metals like gold and silver to diversify their savings. Even central banks around the world are stocking up on gold. It's a time that you learn more about what precious metals can do for you. I think it is. Right now, the top-rated precious metals company, Goldco, is offering a free gold and silver kit to arm you with the facts about how gold could potentially help safeguard your retirement. So visit CandaceLikesGold.com to get your copy of the 2025 gold and silver kit free of charge. Plus, you could receive up to a 10% instant match on bonus silver for qualified accounts. That's CandaceLikesGold.com, or you can call 855-222-GOLD today. All right, guys, the internet is very upset. I have not seen them this upset since Harambe got shot. And it really wasn't Harambe's fault that he got shot. Like, people just are not responsible at zoos. It's very sad that he's at a zoo, he gets shot. The world just falls apart over Harambe. And we are now dealing with a circumstance that is very similar regarding Peanut the squirrel. Okay, so there's this guy. Oh, look at Peanut here. Here he is in a cowboy hat. So sweet, so cute. I'm actually not a squirrel stan. I'm going to own that right now. So I want to be fake. I don't love them. They were a little crazy. On my college campuses, I was convinced that they were being poisoned somewhere nearby, would chase us on college campuses. But whatever, Peanut is not that kind. He's not a college campus squirrel. Peanut actually was adopted, you could say, not legally, but he was taken in from this guy named Mark Longo, who rescued him because I don't think his mother got hit by a car or his dad got hit by a car, and he finds this little baby squirrel and he decides to raise it in his home in upstate New York. And what ended up happening was the New York State wildlife officials seized Peanut the squirrel. And I'm just going to show you some clips of Peanut the squirrel so you could see how cute this squirrel was and how adorable their relationship was. Here he is. He's home. Peanut instantly jumps into his hand. People say a man's best friend is a dog, but obviously Mark has proved otherwise because his best friend is a squirrel. And the squirrel clearly loves him. You know, people love their pets, no matter what kind of a pet it is. Well, somehow the story people are saying is that neighbors got wind of this and they kept reporting Peanut the squirrel. Apparently he has other animals as well. He also has a raccoon. I am randomly into raccoons. They're very funny and very cute and they have little hands. And I think it's been a bad PR job telling people that all raccoons have rabies. But this is what they were alleging about this squirrel, because when the wildlife officials showed up, one of the officials claims that they were bit by the squirrel and that they found out that the squirrel had rabies. Nah, you don't really typically hear squirrel rabies stories. They're saying that, no, absolutely, they lied. And so what they did was they killed Peanut the squirrel. They euthanized him. So we don't know what came first. Like, they euthanized him, social media freaked out, and then they said, no, it was because he bit someone. We determined that he had rabies, or if this is their excuse. But the point is that the internet is upset that Peanut the squirrel is dead, that his life was ended shortly because the New York State Department of the Environmental Conservation decided to seize him. Now, I should tell you an update to the story. I don't know what's separate fact from fiction, but I should just tell you the New York Post is reporting that they were there because the couple were active on OnlyFans and they were creating pornography, and that's why the State Department was there. And then somehow they called, I guess, the environmental people because they recognized that they had these pets. I don't know what's true. There's still more coming out about the story, but I'm not clear on why, if the adults in this house were on OnlyFans, like half of America is, sadly, why that would require them to kill a squirrel. So anyways, wanted to cover the story because everyone is just saying justice for Peanut the squirrel. I don't know what justice for Peanut the squirrel looks like, but I would just like to add my voice that, Peanut the squirrel should absolutely get justice. But I want to be clear that I'm still not entirely a fan of the squirrels. I personally think that they're rats with bushy tails, and but that one's cute. I'll admit, Peanut the squirrel was very cute and he didn't deserve to die that way. And the state needs to just mind their business and let people own pets when they have a lot of property and they're out in the middle of nowhere, like in upstate New York, like Mark Longo was. So that is the name of the game. All right, guys, we are going to get into some of your comments regarding LeBron episode, which went pretty viral because of his absurd propaganda. Just the absurd propaganda. Remember, he just interspliced clips of Trump and he decided to put the background drop of just things that have happened to Black Americans in the past throughout the civil rights movement that had nothing to do with Donald Trump to make people believe that Trump was plausibly speaking about Black Americans. It was a very weak job in terms of propaganda, insulting even the dumbest minority of our country, as the comments revealed. Before I read your comments on that, I'm going to tell you about American financing, because the economy has been a major burden on the average American. Wages are flat, expenses are up, and it is very hard to manage to pay all the bills without using credit cards. So if you're a homeowner and you're frustrated with that cycle, I need you to make a 10-minute, no obligation phone call today to my friends in American Financing. Interest rates are coming down. They're now in the low 5s. So if you're constantly carrying a credit card balance each and every month with a rate in the 20s, American Financing can show you how to put your hard-earned equity to work and get you out of debt. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving their customers an average of $800 a month. And if you get started today, you may not even have to make next month's mortgage payment. So call today at 800-795-1210. Again, the number is 800-795-1210, or you can visit AmericanFinancing.net/Owens. Again, that's AmericanFinancing.net/Owens. All right, comments regarding LeBron James. Tony writes, LeBron endorsed Harris because he's going to need a pardon. Well said. That might be true. Who knows? Maybe that's why they're all doing it. J-Lo, everyone's coming out and they're like, please just don't drop the Diddy tapes, because we know, according to the lawsuits that have been coming out, that they are floating the Diddy tapes, and there's a lot of entertainers and politicians that are on them. Awake But Not Woke writes, if LeBron keeps reading that book, he'll find out that Malcolm X said there's no one more dangerous than the American liberal. That is a fact. He did say that. But LeBron James doesn't get past the first page of the book. So he's never going to find out that Malcolm X was not a fan of the Democrats that he keeps supporting. Malcolm X notoriously said that they will friend you to control you, and that seems to be the case. Alyssa writes, Trump should sue LeBron James for defamation and slander. It's unbelievable. Actually, that would be a strong case. That video, it's very difficult to sue when you are a celebrity, because there is this impossible standard that was established by New York Times versus Sullivan, a case that should be reversed. Because it's unbelievable. You essentially are allowed to lie about celebrities and public figures in America because they established this ridiculous standard that you have to prove that someone demonstrated actual malice and didn't just make a mistake, and it's an impossible standard to reach. That would be a good case. Because how could you not say it's actual malice when you are intentionally choosing words of him speaking to other people to make it seem like he's speaking about Black people? And who wouldn't love to see a case of Donald Trump versus LeBron James? Like, I am so here for that. That's a great clue. I mean, that's a great idea. Okay, a comment over the young child, or early teenager, 14-year-old kid who committed suicide over AI. And I gave my perspective that we do have to stop as parents saying, oh, well, somebody else should be watching my child. We know what it means to hand your child a cell phone and what they have access to, and parental controls exist for a reason. HZL writes, my mom never allowed me a phone until I was 18. I'm doing the same for my kids, period. I very much agree with you. If I gave my kid a phone, there would be essentially nothing on it, and they would know that I had full access to it all the time, and that I read all of their messages when and if I wanted to. And I'm always going to be in control of whether or not they are able to download certain apps until they're out of my house. That's just how it should work. It is a very dangerous thing to give to your child. Miscellaneous comments that we have. This person writes, today, for the first time in my life, I registered and voted. I am a 68-year-old Hispanic male veteran from the deep blue state of New Mexico. My beautiful wife also voted. We both let our voices be heard. Trump, Vance, 24. Let's hope that is what happens. I am never hopeful, because the Democrats always have tricks up their sleeve. And there's a guy who literally flew over from Ireland. I'm not showing it because I don't want the feds to come down on him, but I did see the clip of this guy who flew over from Ireland and voted in 5 states, because they know the states don't check for ID, and he's been able to do it. So that doesn't make me feel great about it. He voted for, I think, Trump, but just the fact that he's doing this to demonstrate how rigged our elections are doesn't make me feel good. Rachel Gibson writes, I'm a white lesbian from a country town in North Carolina, and I love you, Candace. Thank you for always keeping it real and staying true to yourself. Thank you so much for the support. I'm loving what I am doing. And lastly, April writes, the main difference between 2016 and 2024 is that there were no mail-in ballots. Please, everyone who wants America back, vote Trump and Vance. Yes, they fundamentally changed the way that we voted. And for those of us who had a spine and said that since 2020, we know they used COVID as an excuse to essentially radically transform how we vote, and to say, oh, we had to do this because of a virus. It's like, no, you had to do this because you're communists and you want to rig elections. So how about that? How about that? Ladies and gentlemen, we will see what happens. Reminding you that tomorrow our show is going to be off air because I will be in Florida with the PBD team. Very excited about that. So definitely head over to their channel tomorrow if you want to watch me. I'll be with Dave Smith. There's going to be tons of other people there, and they're going all night. They are literally going from like 7 p.m. until 2 a.m. in the morning with election coverage. That is where you're going to want to be at because the lineup is incredible. Very funny people with all different ideas just across the political spectrum. So hopefully I will see you over on PBD's channel. If you're watching this, you see how close we are to 3 million subscribers on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button. If you're watching this on Rumble, please hit the subscribe button as we grow our audience. And of course, if you want to support the show, you can head to locals.com. Keep our independence so that we don't have to rely upon the YouTube gods for money, since we got very quickly demonetized for telling the truth, as usual. We will see you guys on Wednesday with post-election coverage.